Hello there, Shane here. Welcome. It's good to see you all. As part of this celebration of World Stories, I thought I would share some stories with you, 3 stories. We're going through a very unusual time, a time that perhaps most of us have never experienced before. I can remember as a child, not as worrying or as bad as this, but a time when the power used to be turned off in the very early 70s. So we would lose our light in the evening and no TV, no radio. So my father would either get us to play some games under candlelight, or we would sit around and he would tell us stories. Folk fairy tales, 1 or 2 elaborated real life tales that had, well, I'm not sure how much real life in them, but they certainly entertained us. And to get the stories out there, we've had to use modern technology, and it's been a bit tricky getting it sorted out today, as I'm sure a few of us have experienced. But we need to get these stories out there, and so this is the medium that we're using. And I want to tell you a story that happened so far back in time. There was no technology. There was no humans even. It was so far back in time that fish could fly and birds could swim and pigs spoke in rhyme all of the time. That's how long ago it was. When all the creatures spoke the same language. They were at one with each other. The sun was always shining. There was always fruit on the trees. And they invented the phrase hunky-dory, for everything indeed was hunky-dory. One day, the earth tilted on its axis and things began to change. This white stuff began to fall out of the sky. The creatures didn't know it was snow, but it was. At first they began to play with it. They tried to jump up and catch it and chase it and roll in it as it laid in the ground, throw snowballs at each other. But quite soon they began to get cold, very cold. They didn't understand this cold that they'd never experienced before. This white stuff that was beautiful, but it was laying everywhere, and they were beginning to get very, very cold. They wondered if they might freeze to death. The creatures gathered and realized that they needed to do something. But what? Fox said, someone needs to visit the sky spirit high up in the sky. The sky spirit will know what to do. Said the other creatures. Yes, but who should we send? Badger suggested that they send Skunk. No, all the creatures said. We love Skunk, but he has a stripe from the end of his nose that goes all the way down his back to the end of his tail. He won't know if he's walking this way or that way. And besides, if he blows off, smelly. Deer said, why don't we send Owl on that long journey? Ooh, they thought, possibly. But Owl sleeps for most of the day. And it's a long journey. Yeah, perhaps not Owl. Bear said, let's send Fox. No, they all said, all the creatures said, we love Fox. He's so playful and fun, but he'll be chasing the butterflies and the leaves as they blow off the trees. He'll be chasing the clouds across the sky. And then he'll forget what he's even doing. They all thought, who could we send? While the snow continued to fall and they got colder and colder and colder, for there was no fire on the earth to keep them warm, and they were getting colder. While they were talking about what to do, there was a tree, and at the top of that tree there was a bird, a rainbow crow, and he was listening. And he flew down and he joined them. And Rainbow Crow, he was beautiful. He had all the colours throughout his feathers that you could imagine. And when he sang the most beautiful song in all of the forest. And Crow said to his friends, the other animals, I'll go on that journey. And all of them in one voice said, yes, of course, Crow, you are perfect for this journey. Crow said goodbye to his friends. It would be a long, difficult journey. And off he flew, and he began that journey to the Sky Spirit. Well, on the first day, he flew beyond the clouds, and on he flew. The second day, he flew beyond the moon, and on he flew. The third day, he flew beyond the stars, until he came to the place where the Sky Spirit was. But the Sky Spirit was busy doing whatever Sky Spirits do. So Crow began to sing to himself, and he sang that beautiful song that he would sing. And Sky Spirit heard him, and he came to where Sky Spirit was. "Ah," said Sky Spirit, "not only do you sing a beautiful song, but look at you, your feathers, you are magnificent. Pray tell me, why have you come to visit me?" Said Crow. "There is this white stuff falling from the sky, and it is making us so cold, and we are afraid that we will freeze to death." "Ah, that is the snow," said Sky Spirit. "Well, can you remove it?" said Crow. "I'm afraid I don't have that power. Only the Snow Spirit can remove the snow." "But, you have come on a long journey, Crow, and there is something that I can give you." And with that, the Sky Spirit picked up a branch from the ground, and he put it into the flaming sun, and he lit the end, and he gave it to Crow and put it in his beak. And he said, "Crow, take this back to earth. This is fire. This will keep you warm." Crow nodded his farewell and began that long journey back to earth. Well, on the first day, as he was flying back to earth, the stick burnt a little shorter, and the smoke, it curled off and went down his back, and it blackened his tail feathers with soot. On he flew. The second day, the stick burnt shorter still, and the smoke, it curled off, and it covered all of his body feathers in black soot. The third day, on Crow flew back to earth, and the stick was now very short. And when the smoke curled off, it went down his throat. And when he tried to call his song, the only sound that could be heard was, "Ah! Ah!" Quite soon, Crow saw earth. It was a big white ball, and his friends were nowhere to be seen, for the snow had got deeper and deeper and deeper. The little creatures had climbed on the backs of the taller creatures, the hedgehogs and the foxes, but still it had snowed, and it had covered those up too, until the creatures were really worried about what was going to happen. So Crow flew around and around and around until he made a clearing in the wood, and then all the creatures came out, and they jumped off the back of each other, and they all stood there. And Crow said, "This is fire. Gather sticks, gather twigs, make fire." So all the creatures ran into the wood, and they began to pick up sticks and branches and bits and pieces and twigs, and they built a fire. They'd been so cold, and they all began to warm themselves. And they didn't really take account of Crow. They didn't recognise him, for he looked completely different. He sounded completely different. And they didn't really take much notice of him, for they were worried about keeping themselves warm. They didn't want to perish in the cold. Crow left them to it, and he went back up his tree. And there he sat, alone, forgotten, after all that he had done. He was alone for quite some time, and he began to feel sad, and he began to sob. Quite soon, the Snow Spirit came, and it removed all the snow from the earth for that season. Crow was still sobbing. His sobs could now be heard high up where the Sky Spirit lived, and he recognised the sobs. He knew it was Crow. So he came down to visit Crow on Earth. And he looked at Crow and he said, "Crow, why are you crying?" And Crow said, "I know you gave me the gift of fire, and it is keeping all my friends and colleagues warm. But look at me. I don't look the same. I look completely different. They didn't recognise me. And when I sing, the only noise that can come out of my mouth is ah, ah. No longer the sweet song that I once had." Said Sky Spirit. "But Crow, I have given you the best gift of all." Crow looked at him. "What is that? What is that gift? I can't see what this gift is." Crow. "Soon, the two-legged creatures will walk the earth. That's you and I, humans. But they won't hunt you for your meat, for you are too smoky to eat. They won't hunt you to put you in a cage for your song. And they won't hunt you for your feathers to decorate their costumes and their hats." "It's all well and good," said Crow. "But look at me. I am no longer beautiful, and my voice is no longer beautiful." "Crow," said Sky Spirit, "lift up your wing." And Crow lifted up his wing. "Put it into the sun, into the sunlight." And Crow put his wing into the sunlight, and suddenly there were dozens of beautiful iridescent rainbows throughout his black feathers. He hopped so that his whole body was in the sunlight, and suddenly there were not hundreds, but there were thousands of beautiful iridescent rainbows throughout all of his beautiful black plumage. He was beautiful. And when he crowed his song, he realised that his voice was unique to him. He thanked the Sky Spirit. And then Crow joined his friends. And then he told his friends his story of his journey and what had happened. And then, only then, did all of his friends realise how much he had given up just for them. And they realised that Crow truly was a unique creature. And that's a Native American story of Rainbow Crow. Thank you. Just going to have a sip of water. I like to tell stories from all different kinds of places. Some that I come across in books, many that I hear from other storytellers. This is a story from a Scottish travelling storyteller, Duncan Williamson. Sadly, he's no longer with us. I never had the privilege of seeing him. I've heard his voice recorded, and I have 3 of his books. And I feel a real affinity with his stories. I really do. And I want to share one of his stories. Long ago, not in my time, not in your time, but it was in somebody's time. There was a man who lived in a wood, in a little wooden hut, and he lived alone. His friends were the animals of the wood, of the forest. He was no ordinary man. He was a special man. But he was a hunchback, and his face was disfigured and distorted. And this meant that when he went into the village, many of the people would turn their noses up at him, or tease him, or abuse him. So he led quite a solitary life, or so it seemed. But he had the creatures. They were his friends. He had a meagre living. He would gather sticks, a bit like Crow in the last story and his friends, but he would gather sticks, dry sticks, He would bundle them up and he would take them to the village to sell. They could hear him coming before they saw him. He was so poor, he'd had the holes in the bottom of his leather boots, so he'd nailed tin on there. And they could hear him clitter-clatter as he came. And they would tease him and call him names. But someone would buy his sticks and give him a penny or something like that for it. It was difficult times. He might be able to buy a piece of bread or a couple of vegetables. If he made a couple of pennies, he might be able to buy a little piece of meat or something. It was quite a meagre living. He topped it up with the herbs and the greenery that he could find in the woods and the fruits at the right time of year. But there was something that he always did. Whatever he managed to get that day food-wise, when he went back to his hut and he prepared his food, he would stay outside and all the creatures would come and he would feed them. He would feed the robin. He would feed the hedgehog, the badger, the fox. The deer would take something out of his hand. They were his friends and he looked after them. He would always share his food with them no matter what he had. He had a love. He had the love of a mute swan. She was on a little lake in the middle of this wood. She would often sit in the middle of the lake, floating, looking at the other creatures and looking at the man. He would go down there with a little something, a little bit of bread or something, a little bit of corn, to try and encourage her to come across. But she wouldn't. She wouldn't come. So day after day, he would collect wood, go into the villages, make a little bit of money, enough to buy a little bit of food. He'd take it back, prepare it, and share it with the creatures. He would go down to that little lake and he would try and encourage the swan to come across, but she would not come to him. He didn't know why. And this went on for weeks and months, and the seasons began to change. Summer into autumn, autumn into the beginning of winter. One day, he didn't get up out of bed. He stayed in bed all day. The creatures knew something was not right. He was not around like he normally was, and when it was time for something to eat, they knew that time they would all gather outside his little hut. He didn't come out. The robin flicked up to the window and looked inside and could see him just laying there with the blankets pulled up and his back turned to the door. They knew something was not right. The next day, the same thing. He didn't get up at all. The villagers were beginning to say, "Well, where's my wood?" They were beginning to complain. "I want my wood. Where is he? Where is he? I expect he's just laying around doing nothing." A third day. Still, he didn't get up. That blanket was pulled up as high as it could be, with his back to the door. The creatures knew something was wrong. They were beginning to bring little things to him. A few berries, some nuts that they found. Some of the birds brought little flowers that they laid at his door. The creatures were wondering what was wrong. And even though they brought these small little gifts, and he had a little something to eat from the creatures, he still didn't want to get up. The villagers, day after day, complained about where was their wood? Where was their wood? Well, eventually, the villagers, they got their wood from somewhere else and they forgot all about him. But not the creatures. They gathered together and they had a conversation between each other about what to do. The deer knew that the key was the swan. The mute swan who sat in the middle of that lake. The deer knew that he loved her. The deer knew that if they could get the swan to come to the man, it would probably help him. They sent the swift out bird, swooping down low over the water, and she began to speak to the swan. And she told the swan what was wrong. And she swam back to her friends, the other creatures. And some stood and some sat and some sat in the trees waiting to see what would happen. And suddenly the swan, she began to swim to the edge of the lake, and she stepped out and she began to walk up to the hut, and she pushed open the door and she went inside, and the robin just was immediately up at the window looking in, and all the creatures said to Robin, "What's happening? What's happening? Tell us, tell us." And the robin looked and turned and said, "The swan is approaching the bed where he lays. She's walking right up to him." "And what's happening now?" said all the creatures. And the robin looked. "She's beside his bed," said the robin, "and she's laying that long, slender neck of hers onto his chest." "And what's happening now?" said the creatures. "He's stirring. He's turning. He's looking at the swan. He's stroking the swan's neck." "And what's happening now?" said the creatures. And the robin looked. "You won't believe this," said the robin. "She has plucked a feather out of her wing, and she has put it in his arm, the skin of his arm. She's pushed it in there. And now she's plucked a feather from the other wing, and she's put that into his other arm, under his skin. And now she's plucked a breast feather, and she's pushed that into his chest. And now, he is growing feathers all over his body, pure, beautiful white feathers, and his neck is elongating and getting longer and longer, and his head is turning into a yellow beak. He has become a swan." All the creatures gasped, and they stood back as the door opened, and out came the mute swan and her mate. The two swans, they waddled their way to the lake and got into the water and glided out to the middle of the lake, and there they sat in the water looking at all their friends. They had mated. They had become a couple. And you know what they say about swans? They mate for life. And that's the story, a Duncan Williamson story, of the hunchback and the mute swan. Thank you. Just going to have another mouthful of water if you don't mind. So, I thought I might tell you a tale that comes from a Scandinavian country, Norway. It's a story I've heard several different storytellers tell, actually, and it's only in recent times that the story's kind of really gone inside me. I've had a bit more space in my head, perhaps in my heart. And stories, you know, they're out there everywhere, and they float around the world, and every now and again a story kind of goes inside you, and then it becomes something that you must tell. And this story, as I say, I heard it several times, and it eluded me. It wasn't inside me, but for some reason, a few months ago, it just got inside me, and suddenly I needed to tell it. And that's how stories happen, really. That's my experience anyway. And like most good stories, this also happened long ago. And it's about a young boy. He was maybe 8, 9 years of age, possibly a little bit older, and he lived with his grandmother. And they were poor. It was poor times. It was difficult times. They didn't have very much at all. It had been a hard winter, and there was not much food. So they knew that they needed to spread the food out a little bit and just take things a bit more careful. And Gran could see the boy was a bit bored and wanting to do something, and she knew that he liked to help her. And she said, "Jack, if you go into the barn," she said, "there's a sack of oats. There's not much left, but go and get a large handful, bring it back into the house, and I'll cook you something. I'll maybe make some porridge or maybe some flapjacks or something from the oats." "Yes, Grandma," said Jack. And Jack, well, he went outside and he went to the barn, which was just next door to the cottage that they had. And when he looked in the sack, he could see that there wasn't much left at all, actually. And he was going to have to be careful with what he was doing. So he put his hands in and he picked up a handful of oats. And he stepped out the door of the barn, and the north wind blew such a hoolie, it took the oats completely out of his hands. He thought, "I don't believe it. The north wind has stolen my oats. The north wind's stolen my oats," he thought. Well, I thought, I better be a bit more careful. So he went back inside the barn, looked in the bag, and could see there really wasn't much left at all now. Well, he took another handful and he noticed that there was only about a handful left, and he thought, well, I need to be careful now. And he went to the door with his handful of oats, and he looked. And there was no wind. And he stepped outside. The wind took the oats completely out of his hands again. Gone, completely, the north wind. He thought, I don't believe it. It's taken it again. And he went back into the barn again, and he thought, I'm going to have to be really, really, really careful this time. And he got his hands in that sack, and he got the last of the oats, and there was nothing left. This was the last of the oats. And he took that handful of oats to the door, and he stuck his head out and he looked. No wind. He stepped outside. The north wind took the oats completely out of his hands again, and there was nothing left to eat. Well, he went into the cottage. He said, Grandma, I don't believe it. The north wind has come and he's taken all the oats, everything. There's nothing else to eat, Grandma. Where does the north wind live? She said, oh, he lives a long, long, long way away at the edge of the world. Well, I'm going to go and see him, said Jack. Oh, Jack, she said, it's a long, long, long way. I don't care. He said, I'm going to go and see him. I'm going to go and have words with him, and I'm going to sort this out once and for all. And off he went. Well, he walked and 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 he walked. Are we there yet? No, we're not. He walked and 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 he walked. Are we there yet? No, we're not quite yet. It's a long way to the end of the earth, you know. He walked and he walked and he walked and he walked until he got to where the north wind lived, and he knocked on the door. And the door opened. Hello, Jack. Good to see you. How can I help you? You have stolen all my oats, North Wind. Did I? Said the North Wind. I was only doing my daily thing. But you've stolen all my oats, said Jack, and we have nothing to eat. Oh, well, let me see what I can do for you. And the North Wind went into his little cottage. And he got a tablecloth, and he brought the tablecloth back, and he gave it to Jack. He said, take this, Jack. This is a magic tablecloth. All you have to do is unfold it and say cloth, cloth, food, food, and all manner of food will just appear. And you can keep using it and using it and using it. Oh, thank you, said Jack. That's really kind of you, thank you. And Jack tucked the tablecloth under his arm, and off he went. And well, in he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. Well, he'd already done a lot of walking, and he was tired, and it was getting late, and he knew he needed to stop somewhere on the way, and he found an inn to stop at. So he stopped at the inn, and he walked in, and the innkeeper said, could I get you something to eat, something to drink? And Jack said, no. What's this? And he unfolded his tablecloth, and he said, cloth, cloth, food, food. And suddenly, there was all this food. Well, what do you imagine was on there? There was that. What else do you imagine was on there? There was that too, a big bowl. And what else do you imagine? That was on there too. And there was 3 of those on there. Well, all of that food that you've just called out, all of that food was on there. The innkeeper thought, I'm going to have that later. I'm going to steal it. Well, Jack finished his food, no idea the innkeeper's intentions. He ate all his food, he folded his cloth up, and he went up to sleep upstairs in the inn, put the cloth beside him, and he laid down and he fell asleep. Well, the innkeeper went to his cupboard where he kept all his linen, and he found a tablecloth that looked almost exactly the same. And he took that and he went up those stairs. Oh, he thought, to repair that squeaky step, and he went up. And Jack was still asleep, and he went in and he swapped the 2 tablecloths. The very next morning, Jack, well, he had no idea what had happened. He was so excited to get home and show his granny the magic tablecloth that he had. He picked it up and off he went, and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked until he got home to Grandma, and Grandma said, "How did you get on, Jack?" "It's fantastic, Grandma. I have a magic tablecloth. All I have to do is unfold it on a table and it will just give us all the food that we wish for." "Oh, Jack," she said, "you're always coming up with wide, tall stories. I've never heard of anything." No, Gran. He said, you watch. And he unfolded the tablecloth and he said, "Cloth, food. And nothing happened. Cloth, food. Nothing happened. "Jack, you and your tall stories. It's that north wind. He's tricked me. I'm going to go back and see him and talk to him about this. But Jack, it's a long way." "I don't care. I'm going," he said. And off he went. Well, he walked and 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 he walked. "Are we there yet?" "We're not." And he walked 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 and he walked. "Are we there yet?" "No, we're not." And he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked and he eventually got there. And he knocked on the door. And the north wind opened the door. "Jack, back so soon. It's jolly good to see you. How can I help you?" "It's that cloth that you gave me. It doesn't work. And we've got nothing to eat, and I don't know what we're going to do." North wind. "Wait there. That's very most strange. I have something else for you," said the north wind. And the north wind went inside to his little barn that he had, where he kept his creatures, his chickens and his geese and all manner of things. And he came out with a goat. We had a rope halter on the goat, and he came out and he said, "You need to take this goat, Jack." "A goat?" said Jack. "Oh, yes. This is a special goat, Jack. All you have to do is tweak its ears like this, and at the other end comes gold coins." And Jack saw this and he, "Wow, thank you." And Jack took the halter of the goat and off he walked, and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked, and he had a big smile on his face. He thought, "Wow, we're going to be rich. We're never going to have to worry about money. Wow." And he carried on walking and he walked and he walked. Well, he'd already done a lot of walking, and he realised that he needed to rest. And he found himself back at that inn once again. And he went inside, and the innkeeper said, "Can I get anything for you?" And Jack said, "Yes, I want everything that you've got on the menu." "Can you pay for it?" said the innkeeper. "Oh, yes. What's this?" And he tweaked the goat's ear, and at the other end came ting, 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 came the gold coins. "Look," he said. And the innkeeper saw this and thought, Well, Jack ate his meal. Oh, he was so full after eating all of that. And then he thought, well, it's time for sleep now. And he went up the stairs. He took the goat with him. He got the goat to fall asleep on the rug beside him. And Jack got into bed and pulled the covers up, and he fell fast asleep. The innkeeper went to his barn. He had several goats. And he thought, that one looks the same. Put a halter on it, took it in, took it up those stairs. I must fix that step, he thought. He went up. Jack was still asleep. He snuck in and he swapped the 2 goats over. Well, the following morning, Jack woke up, no idea what had happened. He couldn't wait to get back to see Grandma to show her that he had a goat that could lay gold coins. And he took the goat back and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked and he eventually got back to Grandma's. And she said, "How did you get on, Jack?" And he said, "I've got a goat, Grandma." And she said, "Oh, good. Well, at least we can get some milk. At least we can get some milk. That's a good thing." "No, Grandma, it's even better than that. This goat, well, if you tweak its ear like this, at the other end comes gold coins." And suddenly there was plop, plop, plop. What do you think it was? It was goat poop, straight on Grandma's kitchen floor. "Oh, Jack," she said, "it's pooping on the floor. It's pooping on the floor. What are you letting it do?" "Oh, that's strange," said Jack. "It was gold coins before." "Oh, Jack," said Grandma, "you do tell such tall stories. Jack, really." "Well, it's that north wind. He's tricked me once again. I'm going to go back and see him." "Oh, Jack," said Grandma. "Jack, what are you thinking of?" But before she could do anything else, Jack had gone. And he walked and he walked and he walked with a bit more intention this time. And he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. "Is he there yet?" "No." He walked and 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 he walked. "Is he there yet?" "Not yet." He walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. And then he got there and he knocked on the door. A bit louder this time, and he was a bit more annoyed this time. And the north wind opened the door. "Jack, so soon again. How do you do?" "North wind," said Jack, "you are cheating me. The cloth doesn't work. The goat doesn't work. Something's going on. We are so poor, we have nothing to eat. You are just, I don't know what you're doing to us. It works when Wait. "Wait," said the north wind. "I have something that will be able to help you." And he went inside and he brought out a stick. "This is a magic stick. All you have to do is say stick, stick, and it will beat whoever you want it to. And when you want it to stay stop, you just say stick, stick, stop, stop, and it will stop." And he gave it to Jack. And Jack said thank you. He wasn't sure how the stick was going to be helpful, but he said thank you anyway. And off he went. And he had the stick under his arm, and he was walking and walking and walking. Well, it was a long way back to Grandma's, and he'd already done so much walking. He thought, "I need to stop at the inn again." And he stopped at the inn, and he got to the inn door. And just before he went inside, he thought, it works when the north wind gives it to me. And it works here. And then when I get home to Grandma's, it doesn't work. The magic has stopped. So the north wind that here, Grandma, Don't say anything. So we went inside. And the innkeeper got him something very fine to eat immediately and said, "Oh, sort me out later for it." And he saw that Jack had a lovely stick. And the innkeeper thought, I'll have that later. Must be special. Well, Jack finished his meal. Thought, need to go to bed. Picked up the stick and he went up those stairs. And he laid down in his bed and he put the stick right beside him, leaning against a chair. And Jack fell asleep. Well, that's not quite true, actually. He pretended to be asleep. You know what it's like, people, when you're pretending that no one can see you and you're asleep, but really you're looking through your fingers. Well, this is what Jack did. The innkeeper thought, he must be asleep by now. Went into his shed, found an old stick that he had, and he thought, this'll do. And he went up the stairs. I must fix that step, he thought. And he went up and he crept into Jack's room. And just as he was about to swap the sticks, Jack sprang up and said, "Stick, stick, beat, beat." And the stick became alive and it flew around the air and it began to beat the innkeeper on his bottom. "Oh, oh, 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 oh," went the innkeeper. "Oh, make it stop. Ow, oh, it hurts. Ow, ow." "I'll make it stop if you give me back my cloth and my goat," said Jack. "Oh, ow, I will," said the innkeeper. "I promise, I promise." "Stick, stick, stop, stop." And the stick became completely still and was back by Jack's side. And the innkeeper gave Jack back the magic cloth, and he gave Jack back the magic goat. And Jack went home. When he got back home, Grandmother said, "How did you get on, Jack?" "Oh, Gran, it's really good. I've got the magic cloth back. I've got the magic goat back. I've got the magic..." He thought, I better not tell her about the stick. And she, "Oh, Jack, what am I going to do with you? The stories that you tell, the stories that you, tales that you tell, Jack, what am I going to do?" No, Gran, watch, it's real, watch. And Jack unfolded the cloth and he said, "Cloth, food." And all that food that you mentioned earlier, it all appeared on that plate, on that tablecloth. And Granny thought, wow, we'll never have to worry about food again. And then Jack said, "Watch this." And he tweaked the goat's ear. And at the other end came gold coins. "My, Jack," said Grandma, "we will never be poor ever again." And well, they never were poor ever again. And if a traveller ever came past that household in need of a meal, they would always share the food that they had with that traveller. If they ever heard of someone who was in real difficulty, they would share a coin or two with them. And as far as I know, they're still doing exactly that. Well, I've been Shane Ibbs, storyteller. Check me out. I understand below there is a hat where you can donate if you want to into my PayPal account. No obligation. It'd be great if you did. Since the crisis, I have no work. And don't forget, there's already been some wonderful storytellers on, and there's some more wonderful storytellers coming up over the next few days and probably into the following week also. So in this time of not much to do what I did as a child. Sit down and listen to a storyteller. Thank you.
Did you enjoy that storyteller? Of course you did. And if you enjoyed it, like the minstrels of old, we're passing round the hat. And if you have some, whether it's paper or coin, our storytellers would appreciate what you put in. Every penny you put in goes directly to that storyteller through PayPal. All you have to do is go to worldstorytellingcafe.com. Click on today's stories or click on that storyteller and there'll be a hat below the story. And you can just drop a little in that hat. Well, thank you for listening. And if you can afford it, we'd appreciate it.